What are you doing to avoid the common mistakes that a lot of Turo hosts are doing when they're renting a car the very first year? Stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in. This is Car Share Genius. My name is Mr. Luke Evan Brooks. I hope that you are here to learn because that's what we plan on to do. We're talking about things to avoid and practices on Turo. Now, if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe because this is where I drop knowledge on helping people who are new to Turo or having difficulty on Turo get help. I've been through it all. I've been doing Turo for quite some time. I've been in other car rental industries where it has been very difficult, and I have been able to figure out the way to alleviate that. So we're going to take a note from my book. If you don't know what that book is, I'm going to drop a link down below. It's Started on Turo. It's very straightforward. Starting on Turo, I'm looking at my book right now. We're going to talk about things to avoid and best practices. So I'm going to be looking back and forth as we do our notes here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is liability. A lot of hosts, and I mean a lot, go through this issue where they are not aware of what they're doing on the platform. Not saying they don't know that they own Turo, but they don't know, hey, do I need to get insurance? Hey, is the car registered? Hey, do I have the tire safe? Because it's a liability issue. So in my book here, I talk about some of the things that you need to be smart about. You need to be smart about the limitations. You need to be smart about the coverage that you're getting and what it is applied to. Is fully and not fully applied. For instance, if you have your car being rented out currently on Turo, it's underneath a protection plan. That depends on what protection plan you get, is how your coverage would be. When your car is not being rented out, let's say you're using it for your own personal use, that's where your insurance takes over. For me, I don't drive my cars. I do not drive them because they're meant to be used to make money. That's what we're there for. If I drive them, I'm taking them to do maintenance, I'm taking them to do an oil change, whatever it may be, getting to clean up for the next guest, but not to be using it on a half-time basis. Full-time, making money. Now, one thing I will say is that for wherever you're at, you need to apply accordingly for your law, meaning that if your state requires you to have certain devices on your vehicle or certain things that should not be in your vehicle, for instance, if you are living in the state of Virginia, it is illegal to own a radar detector. I live in the state of North Carolina. Rules apply differently in each state. So you want to make sure that you stay up to par with your states. Now, for instance, some places such as New York, I think, and Maryland, don't hold me on to that, but from what I've seen, that certain areas, Turo's not allowed. So before you even start thinking about getting a car, getting a fleet going, using Turo, you want to make sure that your state is okay with you having Turo in the state. So we're going to talk about the second thing. You have to maintain transparency and communication with your guests. So these are some of the things that I recommend to people. The first thing you need to do is make sure that you have your guests always talking to you on Turo app. Make sure you download it. Tell them to download it. That's the first message I give to my guests when they rent the vehicle. I let them know that they need to have the Turo app on their phone. I let them know, for example, that they need to make sure they read the terms and conditions of Turo so there's no hidden shocking factors or anything like that. It's within the first 5 minutes when they rent this vehicle out. The second thing, if you can't get them on the Turo app, which it happens, is text with conditions, right? So I used to write the whole thing for whatever I had on Turo Messenger app. I'll write it into the text. I stopped doing that. What I've done is that I let the guests know that I sent them a very important message that they must read on the Turo app, forcing them to go back to number one. Number three is the phone call. I will call them The phone calls can go either way. If it's an emergency and they need help, let's say the car ain't starting or they don't know how to do a certain thing with the car as far as engaging the emergency brake or how to do the Bluetooth, that's nothing right there. That's not something that needs to go in the Turo Messenger app. And you got to use your own judgment, guys. I think it's best when you're talking to your guests to send them the instruction or actually show them a video of how to operate these things. But if there's like codes that they need or anything like that, I don't give it to them over the phone. I redirect them all the way back up to the Turo app because that's the main thing that you want to have. Number one, it shows Turo that y'all two are talking. They really they can't track no phone call. They might question the text message. They say they really don't look at that. It's questionable, but if you got screenshots, it could work. But I take all the doubt when I say send them to the Turo app. Another thing that I will tell people is this: when you're on the app, you want to make sure that you are showing everyone the messages, meaning that you're doing scheduled messages. You can program your messages, and that way, when your guests are trying to talk to you, the messages are already sent out. You don't have to worry about because it's gonna be hard when you start managing about five, six, a dozen cars, 25 cars. It happens, guys, and tracking it can be very difficult. That's why you want to get your automation messages in there. Another thing that you want to bring up to your guests is the transparency of the rules. We already talked about the terms and conditions. You want to be able to address these things and let them know that, hey, if you're messing up the car, these are what these typical fees are. For example, I have a Dodge Charger 2011. It is old, but it runs very well. I let guests know, hey, this car has a kill switch in it. I let them know, hey, if you're caught driving 100 miles per hour or more, I am authorized to shut down the vehicle. I have the right to shut down the vehicle and contact the authorities. And it might sound like I'm being Uncle Scrooge or whatever, but it's a safety issue that goes back to what we talk about liability. You don't want something to come back and get you at the end. You be like, hey, he drove my car, I ain't have no control over it. And they said, well, it's your car. You should have did something else. We live in a world like that, right? And that's where we talk about LCs in my book too, that you definitely want to check out. And the course will be dropping here. So you may be seeing it right over here for the course and the book right over here. Links are going to be right down below. All right, our final part here, because I like to get right to the point. Vehicle maintenance and care. Let's talk about that for 1 second. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the critical items that you should be tracking. You should have some type of outliner where you're using Excel or using a piece of paper, which I don't recommend using a piece of paper because paper can get lost. What I use, to be honest with you, is called Bouncy. Bouncy allows me to track my vehicle, keep up with the maintenance, and make sure if there's any issues, I get notified or my team gets notified. Bouncy is a GPS device that plugs up into your ODB sensor. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that your car is safe and definitely want to make sure your guests are safe as well too. And this way you can keep track of where they're going, the movements, geofencing, all the parameters set. And you can share this to, like I say, to your team, and your team is able to see exactly what you're seeing. And you got controls over what they can do, whether they can do editing or just view. So that's something that is going to be a link down drop below that you can check out as well too, guys. So these are the things that I look at in consideration. At the end of the day, these things can bite you in the butt. You want to make sure that you're checking your battery, your brakes, your tire, your engine, and your fluids. Battery should be checked every year. It should be actually checked every 6 months. Make sure there's no corrosion going on. You got to think about it. Your vehicle is being driven higher than normal. It's not the typical, I drive to work every day, this and that. You have people who take long trips, and that's based off my experience that I'm seeing people rent my cars out on weekends always. I see people taking trips to the beach, going from North Carolina to South Carolina. I've seen people go all the way down to Miami, Florida in my vehicle. It's your job to make sure that car gets there and back safely with that guest in the vehicle. You want to definitely want to check out your brakes. I had numerous situations where we had brakes on a vehicle that was about to give out. My recommendation is that you go for the top superior brakes and rotors, whether you're going to your local AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, or your local mechanic shop. You want the more durable brakes because it saves you money on the long run. I remember going off with the cheap brakes starting off when I just had two cars, and they will go out every 6 months. I'm like, damn, I just bought these. It's because of the material. The higher quality the material, the longer your brakes will last. And it's also dependent on the driving habits of your guests. If your guests are always hard braking, they're doing a lot of sudden breaks or whatnot, you want to make sure that you are not in a situation where you're constantly replacing it. When I switched over to the Duralast Gold for my Dodge Charger, and brakes looking good, no issues. And how I know that is that I can go to the mechanic shop and let them do a free brake check. Again, guys, this is something that I recommend. You just looking at the brakes ain't gonna really tell you anything. When they got devices that can do the measurements of your brakes, the caliber, see how thick it is, this gives you reassurance to make sure everything's okay. Tires. This is another thing that would go very quickly. I have replaced tires for all of my vehicles every year because of how they drive. And now you can go for higher quality tires. It just depends on what type of vehicle you have. You can go for cheaper tires. My recommendation is don't go for cheap tires unless you are really on a budget, you're really tight on money, because those tires are just going to be burning through your pocket. They got tires on Amazon for like $89. You might say that's a good deal, but then okay, you got to think about something. You got to think about the hazard, right? Road hazard. You got to think about, balance and rotation. You got to think about all these things right here. You got to think about the drivability of that tire. If that vehicle is going to be able to be driven the way it needs to be driven, you want to make sure you got a good brand. You don't want a cheap brand that's not going to really hold up. Now, if it was your car and you just driving it on your own, you feel comfortable doing that, yes. But you have to also think how many other people are going to be driving your car each day, each week, each month, each year. And you don't want to have something that's going to compromise your vehicle because you got something cheap. Road Hazard, I always get Road Hazard. I use Discount Tire or I go to Firestone. That's just my preference where I'm at in the South. It helps me out in the long run. The other thing that I do look at is constantly making sure that the car's tires are rotated. Now, you want to make sure they rotate between, I say, 5 to 10,000 miles because you want to have an even wear on your tires. You don't want your tires to go out so quickly. You're like, damn, I just got it. This will keep your tires lasting long when you're doing this. It lasts long at the long run. And that's what you want to have, guys. So we talk about the engine, spark plugs. You want to check the spark plugs out. Spark plugs, depending on what your manufacturer for your vehicle recommends, you want to make sure spark plugs, antifreeze, you know, pipes, all the stuff. You want to check everything because you don't want to have a bust up hose or anything that's going to start leaking stuff. I've seen this, I've been through it. You want to check this on a regular. If your mechanic is saying you need to do something, have them let you look at it. You don't have to go off that word. It may be something that might be minor, but you want to put your eye on it and then just understand what that cost is. You always want to save money on this. Finally, going into it, fluids. Are you topped off? Is the engine got enough oil in it? Do you have enough antifreeze or coolant in the vehicle? What about windshield wiper? Yeah, windshield wiper fluid is important too. You want to make sure all those things are in place in order for your vehicle to be running smooth and efficiently. So, guys, I hope that this helps you out. There's much, much more in my book, starting out on Turo. There's going to be a link down below, guys. Definitely check it out. I hope that this helps you out. Make sure you check out the course as well too. It's Car Share Genius. You definitely want to check that out. Make sure that you drop your comments down below. If you have any questions or comments, I'm here to help. Any question that may not be answered here for today, because this was a short video, I'm here to help. So guys, definitely, I'll be seeing you on the other side. Make sure if this brought you value, you make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Again, my name is Mr. Luke Evan Brooks, and I see you next time. Take care.